I'm Elliot, and welcome to Conflict Uncovered, your go-to podcast for in-depth analysis on the complex and dynamic conflicts shaping the Middle East, Israel, and the world. Join us as we delve into the latest developments, historical contexts, and the geopolitical forces at play. We bring you the insights you need to understand the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay engaged, and uncover the truths behind the headlines. Hi, and welcome. Welcome back. It's been a number of months since I recorded last, and now I'm planning to get back into the swing of things. You'll be seeing more podcasts coming out on a regular basis, I hope. It is October 12th, and late afternoon here in Israel. We are awaiting the return of the surviving and not surviving hostages, and we have an agreement with Hamas or something. So let's break down what's happening, what has happened, what may happen, and what could happen in the middle of a period where a lot is being said, not much is being put out from the secret agreements, and of course, as usual, a lot of nonsense from all sides. Let's start from the beginning. The agreement that Israel and Hamas came to with the prompting and pressure of the United States, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, and whoever else, is the direct result of the defeat of the IDF on October 7th and its inability to succeed in Gaza in the following 2 years. Now, let's be clear. The IDF achieved magnificent tactical successes in the course of the past 2 years, starting already on late October 7th, 2023, and sweeping through the months and years that followed against Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, tactical successes against the Houthis in Yemen. There were failures along the way, like the strike against the Hamas leadership in Doha. But all in all, if we look at the balance sheet starting on the late afternoon of October 7th, 2023, overall, tremendous successes at relatively low cost. And of course, every life, every wounded is a tragedy, and I don't belittle it. But if we look at it in purely military terms, relatively low cost to the IDF. Having said that, the failure of October 7th, the Hamas attack, its utter destruction of the Israeli defenses, the killing of over 1,200, the taking hostages, the savagery, the atrocities, can only be labeled a severe defeat, as well as the fact, as we move on, that 2 years later, we had not defeated Hamas in Gaza, and in counterinsurgency and guerrilla warfare, the rule is very simple. If the insurgents are not destroyed, they can legitimately declare victory. And they will, and they have. As a consequence, in this long, drawn-out campaign, Israel has lost a great deal of standing in the world. I'm not going to say that there's been a rise in anti-Semitism, because I believe anti-Semitism has already been there. But Israel is more isolated than ever and more susceptible to pressure from the United States, which remains Israel's essentially only significant ally and friend. Not that there are no others, but all pale compared to the United States. So what have we got? There are those who, for their own particular political or ideological reasons, say we are on the verge of peace. The war is over. So here let's start with that because definitions matter. The war is not over. The war did not begin on October 7th, 2023. The war began long before Israel's existence, went through 1948 and continues until today in varying ideological and religious variations, but it all boils down to this. Israel's enemies, be they enemies for as Arabs, enemies as locals, or enemies as Islamists, are at war with Israel's existence. This is not a war of territory. This is not a war of policy. It is a war of existence. And we know this simply because they say so. And they are continuing as is. So the war with Iran didn't start this past year. It started when Khomeini came to power in 1979. The war with Hezbollah didn't start this past year. It started when Hezbollah came into existence a little over a year after Khomeini's rise to power. The war with Hamas dates back to the 1980s and beyond, when its founding was the next step of a process begun by Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, who was the founder of Hamas, and dating back to the Muslim Brotherhood, which takes us to the 1920s. The war didn't end and is not ending this week, because as long as Hamas remains Hamas, as long as Hezbollah remains Hezbollah, as long as radical Islam jihadis remain radical Islam jihadis, they will be at war with Israel. And here again, using the most recent and local, Hamas says so outright. The resistance continues, and so on. So what have we gained? So far, we've gained a promise that the living hostages, apparently 20, and we'll see in reality, but let's say apparently 20, will be returned sometime within the next 24 or so hours, a little bit less, from when I'm making this recording. I would not be surprised if at the last minute Hamas finds a reason not to return all of them, but for the sake of where we're sitting at the moment, apparently they will. Of the 28 or so bodies that they're holding, they've already said they can't find 9 of them. My guess is that they won't be able to find more than 9, but here again, we'll see. In any event, tomorrow, Israel will not get back the entire 48 that Hamas agreed to return within 72 hours. We've already accepted that. And this is the first step of bad news in this agreement. Because the minute Hamas is permitted the slightest crack in variation in not holding to it, they will use it, leverage it, widen it, and we will see the results of that into the future. Having said that, the return of the hostages is very important, critically important. The price that's being paid in terms of terrorist murderers who are being released is significant, but in my opinion, given the scale of the enemies that we have, another couple of hundred murderers is not going to make much of a quantitative difference. Now, there are those who are out there saying, well, releasing Yahya Sinwar in the Shalit deal is what brought October 7th. No, it isn't. What brought October 7th was an Israeli military and political leadership failure that dates back decades, that left the Gaza border manned and equipped with a tiny fraction, I'm talking about less than 10%, of the force that should have been there by any reasonable military standard. That was the error. With Sinwar, without Sinwar, if Hamas had been left to its own devices, it would have come to the same conclusion. He was the implementation. And let's not confuse Yahya Sinwar with people like Adolf Hitler. Hitler was the creator of the Nazi Party and the driver of it till his death in 1945. Sinwar was not the creator of Hamas. He didn't create its brutality. He simply was the one who channeled it in 2023. There was no shortage of others, including others who we've sent along on the same way as we send Sinwar, like his brother Muhammad, like Muhammad Def, and others. So the release of the murderers is galling. It's horrendous, but it's worth the price at this point to bring the hostages home and close at least that chapter of the failure of October 7th. What's more important is what happens next. Now, as Israel, as the IDF withdrew, and here also let's be clear, the IDF withdrawal is an irritation. It's a tactical failure as part of an agreement. But we're not talking about an Israeli withdrawal from Gaza like an American withdrawal from Afghanistan. The IDF has pulled back a few kilometers. If it pulls back all the way, which I don't advocate, it'll be a few more kilometers. In other words, the IDF will remain deployed in tactical distance to re-enter Gaza at any point. So the withdrawal in and of itself is not really much of an issue. What is an issue is handing Gaza over back to Hamas, and that's already begun. Hamas has already stated that it's prepared to deploy 7,000 armed police. I love it. To maintain order in Gaza. They've already begun taking revenge on those who've opposed them. And of course, for this, the world says nothing. Hamas will remain in Gaza. Hamas will not disarm, and all leverage against it has basically been squandered. All that's left at this point is to talk about what happens in terms of enforcement and administration in the aftermath. In the coming stages of negotiation, does Israel insist on Hamas disarmament? Does the world, meaning the United States and the Arab negotiating teams, agree with that? Or do they say to Israel, you know what, as Joe Biden famously said, take the win and walk away? If Israel walks away, we are going to see another power of Hamas on the level of October 7th in the not too distant future. 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Resupply will come quickly enough. It will come through those who are supposed to prevent it, namely Qatar, but also from Egypt, from Turkey, each of whom has their own reasons to maintain Hamas as a counterpoint and power to fight against Israel. The only way Israel can prevent that, or at least delay it from happening, is to insist, as we did in Lebanon against Hezbollah, that Israel will have the ultimate legitimacy to strike against Hamas's rebuilding. And here again, this is not an if, it's a when. When we see Hamas bringing rockets in, building ammunition storage, building munitions construction and manufacturing, the mechanism must be ultimately that if it is not removed, destroyed by whoever is responsible inside Gaza, Israel will give them notice and do it by itself. In addition to that, something that we should have learned in October 1973, but we didn't learn, and hopefully we will have learned from October 2023, is never, ever, ever turn your back on an enemy and say, go ahead and try it. That was what was done then. It was done again 2 years ago. And the idea that nothing to worry about, they won't do it, is the ultimate conceptual failure that led to October 7th. We'll see over the coming days and weeks exactly how this plays out. What I'm watching for in particular is now how much pressure is going to be put on Israel to walk away from issues like Hamas remaining the power in Gaza, Hamas remaining armed in Gaza, the nonsense of the starvation and humanitarian aid has already been exploded. The day after the agreement, UNRWA announced that they have 3 months' worth of food in Gaza for everybody. It wasn't there 2 days before. It was an absolute miracle. Suddenly, nobody's starving. The protection of the groups, families, militias that began to form to counter Hamas, which Hamas now desperately wants to get its hands on and massacre, will be another factor to look for, not because of them so much, but because if Israel and the West want to develop any sort of opposition to Hamas, they have to be able to show that they can protect them when Hamas comes after them. And once again, these are not ifs, these are whens. So this is where we're standing at the moment. Over the next few days, we'll see, first of all, how much of a farce and fiasco Hamas turns the hostage release into. They've promised no ceremonies, very formal, very quiet. I'm not holding my breath, but I'd like to be surprised. And we'll see how many actually come back and in what condition they are in. Because Hamas's definition of alive may not exactly match Western medicine's definition of alive. But once again, we'll see that in the next day or so. And as the negotiations develop and with whatever we can see coming out, I'll comment as we go. Much more to talk about on this, and I will give some more background, more issues, more of Israeli strategy, strategic failure, tactical success in the days and weeks to come. So in the meantime, stay connected, stay tuned, stay safe. Thank you for listening to Conflict Uncovered. As always, it's been another rough day in the Middle East. We hope you found this episode insightful and engaging. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share and recommend with your friends, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. For more in-depth analysis and exclusive content, join our community and follow us on social media. Stay tuned for our next episode as we continue to explore the critical issues shaping the Middle East and the world. Until next time, stay informed and stay safe.